the Arts. My name is Hyla Crane, and I'm the Executive Director, and I'm so happy that you could join us this afternoon. As always, I have a very special guest. My guest today is Dr. Paul Nusbaum, whose specialty is brain health, something we all need to be concerned about. And Dr. Nussbaum is going to be coming to the Marco Island Center for the Arts to do a presentation and a book signing on January 26th at 5:30 p.m. It's a $10 ticket price, and we still have seats available. So we're going to take a few moments now and talk with Dr. Nussbaum. How are you, Paul?
Hey, Hyla, thank you so much for having me. Doing fine, thank you.
We're so glad you could join us. Now, I know your presentation for us is entitled Brain Health Across the Lifespan. Can you explain to us a little bit about what you're going to be sharing with the people who will be joining us on the 26th?
Sure, and I look forward to coming to the Marco Island Center for the Arts. It'll be very exciting. Yeah, basically, I've had a passion for teaching the general public all across the world, actually, about the miracle that sits between the ears, the human brain, the single greatest, most magnificent system ever designed, and how it works, and to empower everyone with the idea from research that you have the ability to shape your brain for health, regardless of your age. And you know, most of us, even in 2022, right? We don't know about the human brain. We don't think about it, and we certainly don't consider ourselves empowered to shape it for health. So this oftentimes is a whole lot of fun. It's exciting and it's personal.
Well, I know that obviously we are down here and we want to live life to the fullest, and that requires a brain that is healthy and working. So we are exciting. I mean, are you going to be able to share things with us things we could actually do where we're going to see changes, where we can really make a change?
Yeah, absolutely. There's going to be a whole lot of practical tips, again, born from research and what we know about how we can shape the brain for health and build what's known, Hyla, as resilience. Now, we don't, for example, have cures for things like Alzheimer's, which everybody knows about and unfortunately has touched so many of our lives. But we do have the ability to build up resilience to delay the onset of clinical disease. And that's a very, very powerful statement. And there's some basic things that Grandma taught all of us. We always talk about it. We always couch it in terms of taking care of our hearts. Mm-hmm. In this case, I'm going to frame it on the more important part of our body, and the cardiologists always get mad at me for saying that, but it's the human brain. It's the origin of our every thought or every dream or every motor skill or every imagination. Everything that we are comes from our brain.
That's true. So are we going to be potentially, and again, I just ordered your book so I can get it signed, but it will arrive by the 26th. Are we looking at factors like diet or, things that are generally good for our health, diet, exercise? Is that part of this, or are there specific kinds of exercises we should be doing to keep our brain sharp?
Yeah, so to organize it, it really was born out of animal research, Hyla, back in the 1950s when they studied rodent brains, and they found that rodents that interacted with other rodents, that's called socialization. Rodents that ran on a running wheel, that's called exercise or physical activity. And that rodents that played with toys or mental stimulation, their brains were very different in a positive way relative to rodents who didn't. I did a lot of reading of that, and then added in nutrition, as you pointed out, and spirituality, reduction of stress in our lives. And so my brain health lifestyle really has those 5 components: socialization, spirituality, nutrition, mental stimulation, and physical activity. And we're going to talk about very specific research-based activities that we can all engage in that changes the structure and the function of our brain in a positive way.
Wow. That's really, really useful, and something that, we all need to be cognizant of. As I said, people come down here and we are living in paradise, and people want to be able to enjoy it. And obviously, beautiful weather gives us great opportunities for outdoor athletics, outdoor sports. I know for me, I have to ask you, is this something that was a good choice? I've started taking dance classes, and my instructor asked me what I wanted to do or learn, and basically I told him I didn't want to do anything where I could get hurt because I'm old now. But I wanted to work on choreography because I felt that if I was learning steps in sequence, I was using my memory and that was going to be helpful for me. Is something like that a useful tool?
Yeah, it's very interesting you say that because dance has been shown to, for example, reduce the risk of dementia because it builds up resilience in the brain. So pattern dance that you're probably more expert at than me involves not only a motor skill, right, but also a cognitive skill. And so dance, another one that you might be interested in, and I just did a thing for National Geographic in that travel reduces the risk of dementia because anytime we plop our brains into a novel and complex, those are two really important words, novelty, complexity, right? New and difficult. Anytime we plop our brains down into a new and difficult environment, we do very good things for our brain, developing new neural tracks. And the more neural tracks, the neural connections that you have in your brain, the more resilience you build up. You can think, the way I explain it, the metaphor I use for folks is, it's kind of like, think about your brain like a jungle, okay? And if our brains are set up like jungles where we have a lot of neural connections, cellular connections, think about a disease like Alzheimer's as a weed whacker. I'm not trying to be funny. The disease comes in and it takes out brain cells, but if you have a brain that's set up like a jungle, how long is it going to take a weed whacker to show any kind of imprint in a jungle? A long time, right? So the more that we do with travel, the more that we do with physical exercise, the more that we do reducing stress, on and on and on, the more our brains kind of physically look like a jungle, and it'll delay the onset of disease. Even if the disease is there, it may not show its face, which is really, really kind of significant.
I definitely think you keep talking about reducing stress, which, believe me, if I could figure out how to do that, I would be a really happy person. One of the things we talk about with, we all obviously offer a lot of adult art classes and workshops, and I've done a little research, and it sort of coincides with what you're saying because people are coming in when you're painting, when you're drawing, you're making decisions, you're thinking, you're creating, and I know from what I've read that not only is that good for cognitive function, it also is stress relieving for people, which you've said is something that's important. I query after the last 2 years that we've had, I would love to learn new ways about reducing stress. So I'm hoping that we're going to talk about a little stress reduction when you come to speak with us.
Yeah, the brain doesn't like to be under chronic stress, right? So acute stress can be helpful. It helps us survive, gets us ready for an examination or a big presentation, if you will. But, chronic stress, what happens is cortisol is a hormone that gets produced and proliferates our entire body and our brain. And that's what happens when people will tell you that they're not remembering quite as well. I have a lot of 50-year-olds who come to me and think they have Alzheimer's, and they don't, Hyla. They're juggling 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 balls all at once. Or we're living in an environment now where there's a lot of pressure, like from COVID, right? And a lot of things that we've had control taken from us in a lot of ways. We've isolated, we've had to change things, we don't have our routines. It's been very difficult. And the brain doesn't deal well with that. And so I'll talk a little bit about that. I'll show the structures in the brain that get hit with stress. But the good news is, again, we're empowered to learn how to manage that, to reduce it. And the good news is, if I have some forgetfulness because of stress, the more I manage those stressors, the more my memory comes back to me and my ability to remember improves.
That makes me feel much better. I will say that a small non-for-profit art center's survival during a pandemic was at times questionable, and that certainly was stressful. But I think we have managed through it, and I feel better knowing that if I take good care of my brain now, I won't be forgetting things in the future. Right. I want to talk a little bit about your background here. I know that you are a clinical neuropsychologist. You're an adjunct professor of neurological surgery at University of Pittsburgh School of Medicine. Can you talk a little bit about when we're talking about clinical psychology and geropsychology, what are we really talking about with regard to your field? And how did you become interested in that?
Yeah, so the clinical psychology and geropsychology is the study of human behavior. Gero means older adults, the study of older adults, older brains, older habits and behaviors. I've always been interested in human behavior since the time I was a little boy. I didn't understand it, right? But I was a person. I still am a person who kind of obsesses over just watching humans and get excited about that. And when I was in graduate school, I was introduced to a mentor who was one of the premier neuropsychologists in the country. So he began to teach me about the human brain, and I just have a burning passion to this day studying the human brain. I think it's the final frontier. It can unlock all of the answers that we have about the human condition, about cancer, about Alzheimer's, about world peace, all those kinds of things. All the answers are there. We're just so primitive, relatively speaking, that we haven't tapped into it yet. So what I've been trying to do, my mission over the past 20 years, is to take what I've learned in sort of the academic ivory towers, which was really from a disease perspective, and apply that skill set, one, teaching the general public, and two, thinking of it more in terms of health promotion. And that's a little bit of a different slant. It makes me not necessarily better or worse, but different. And so that's got me into a lot of different verticals where I work with the education system, I work with business, I work with the healthcare community, certainly, on and on and on, that I would never dreamed I would have done if I would have stayed sort of in my, my academic track. So that's the fun part for me. It's never the same. And the work that we're going to do together, I'm just really jazzed up about. As you and I talked about, my wife and I moved down to Marco relatively recently. I've done a couple of talks at one of the major hotels here for some conferences, but this one's going to kind of be intimate, right? This one's going to be with some friends and community and home. And to bring that message to people that, you live with in your home and in your community, to me anyway, is really important. So I really look forward to it.
Well, I have to tell you, we are so appreciative of you coming to the Art Center to do this talk. I certainly know from visiting your website and looking at your CV that you are very in demand as a speaker, and we are just feeling very grateful to have somebody with your background, your talent, your knowledge coming to speak to us. Can you just tell me a little bit? I know that you are the founder of the Brain Health Center. Now, is that a space, or is that sort of the collective under which you publish your books and people can contact you about speaking and everything else that you do?
Yeah, that's a great question. So it was both. I actually formed a brick and mortar in Western Pennsylvania where we really integrated what you would think of as traditional Western kind of medical approaches to things like Parkinson's and stroke and Alzheimer's, with more Eastern philosophies where we had yoga instructors, we had folks who were trained in meditation, we had a dietitian, we did some things like art and music and dance, and we because one of the things I appreciated, Hyla, and I've been fortunate to be around a lot of smart people, and I've had really good training, is that we don't have all the answers. We certainly don't. And I always advocate having a big toolbox to try to manage what's a person struggling with. And we're all struggling. You don't have to be a patient or not a patient. We're all struggling. We all have stress. We all have days where we don't feel so good. We all have anxiety, on and on and on, right? So number one, you listen to the person when they're talking to you. And number two, you try to apply what they're telling you they need that's keeping them from being whole. And so that's the definition of a holistic approach. And that's what I believe in. And so while I don't have that brick and mortar space anymore, we had it for multiple years, the philosophy, the mission, all of the folks that work there, 40 plus folks that work there with us, continue to kind of distribute this mission and this teaching and the practice. As you know, my wife teaches yoga down here on the beach, and I try to stop every now and then, do a brain health moment, is what I call it. You have 60 seconds to impart a brain health moment. So trying to really continue to impart the message and to empower people with what they can do on their own. There's no cost. I don't go out and say you got to buy these things, or buy that gadget or do this thing. It's all kind of lifestyle based. And I have found that there's been some really significant moments for people changing their lives and helping them to become whole again and to overcome some real struggles. And that's that. I don't know a better feeling one can have than to see that when a person has personal growth, and overcomes struggles or traumas or difficulties. That to me anyway is what it's all about.
Well, that's an incredible gift to have the background and the training, and to be able to share that with people so that they can live better, fuller, happier lives. So I think that's quite remarkable. There's one thing I picked up, and I just because I'm curious, you said that some of your work has taken you to education. Is any of that relating to the brain and how we learn?
Absolutely. So schools, to me, are really brain health centers, right? So when our little ones walk into the school, the part of the anatomy that's being massaged is not the big toe, it's the brain. And so I've been in front of thousands of teachers at one time, and I've gone into schools across the country, really empowering the teachers to understand that they're really the frontline leaders for brain health, that learning really is a prescription for brain health, because it actually massages very, very important parts of our brain called the hippocampus. We'll learn about it next week. I think it's the most important part of the body. And the more that you stimulate that part of your brain, the more you build your life story and have access to that life story. It's also the area of the brain where we generate new brain cells. We learned that in 1998. Think about that for a second. 1998, we learned that. So, and the other cool thing is kids at all ages begin to, again, be empowered that they can shape their brain for health, maybe make better decisions as they live across their lifespan than some of us have made in terms of promoting brain health. And the earlier, what I've learned, even though I was an expert supposedly in older adults, and I've learned that if you want to live a long, healthy life, you got to start very early. So the largest crowd I was ever in front of, Hyla, was 15,000 kids, and teaching about the brain and brain health. And the good news is kids really get jazzed up about this, and they have fun with it. There was one school out there that created a science fair around the brain. They began to change their foods in the cafeteria and things that were sort of nutritionally relevant for the brain. So a lot of cool, practical things happen. And that's, I'm a big one on that, and trying to promote that for our education system.
You said foods. I know you'll probably talk more about this when you come to the Art Center, but is there one food that we should be thinking about adding to our diet, maybe?
Yeah, that would probably be fish, right? I mean, being down here where you and I live, we're kind of lucky with that. So, omega-3 fatty acids, our bodies don't produce those. We're born with them, but our bodies don't produce them. So we have to consume them. And powerful omega-3s are found, the good omega-3s are found in fish, but also in certain kinds of nuts and seeds. And if people were really interested in a diet, you should Google kind of like the Mediterranean diet is very, very good for the brain. There's a diet called the MIND diet, MIND, which integrates foods for the brain together with foods that'll reduce hypertension. So they call it the MIND diet. And you'll find the foods there that are very, very good. But they tend to be fish and green, plant-based kinds of foods, and seeds and fruits and vegetables. A little bit of wine, okay? Or I'll get asked that next week.
You will, especially because for our friends out there, as you know, for all of our events, whether it's music, an art reception, or a speaker, we will be offering you a complimentary glass of wine, courtesy of our amazing sponsor, Total Wine and More of Naples.
Well, there you go. And that'll fit with the brain.
I was about to say, a little red wine, a little dark chocolate, probably not too bad for us.
Yes.
You have also published, and rather extensively, and I know I've ordered one of your books. What's been your process when you're writing? I mean, I should have done a count on the website. How many books have you published at this point?
Yeah, so I've been involved in 12 or more,
Wow.
in a lot of publications, but early on it was, Hyla, frankly, early on it was to maintain a job, right? I mean, you had to publish or perish. And I was
Exactly.
writing about things I was passionate about. But again, about 20 years ago, when I made a pivot to the general public, I began writing about things that sort of I felt inspired or called or moved to write about, which was again, connecting with the general public. And so a lot of my writings over the past 20 years have been for the general public. I really don't, I'm not concerned whether I get published for peer review kinds of things anymore.
Right.
So I'm in, Better Homes and Garden and, National Geographic and all these things you'll find in the checkout store over at Winn-Dixie, what have you. But a lot of the writings, again, it's a belief that, look, we have a lot of really great information, a lot of smart people have produced, and I feel like I want to get that information and bring it to the dinner tables for Americans and for people across the world, because it's important to know. And I mean, think about it. How many of us are going to be running off to the academic library to read Dr. Nussbaum's latest publication? Not many, right?
No, the New England Journal of
Right.
Medicine is probably, or
Right.
Lancet is not going to be on my coffee table anytime soon. I agree.
Right.
But of your
Right.
books, which ones would you recommend? If somebody wanted to learn
Yeah.
more about this or to get a head start before you talk, which would be the books you would recommend somebody
Yeah.
to have?
So the first one was Brain Health and Wellness. That was in 2003 or 4. That was one of the first, here we go. We're going to start to pivot now. We're going to start talking about this. And then, of course, Save Your Brain. You and I have talked about. AARP ranked that as a top 5 book
I
for
got that.
brain fitness and brain health. If people are into spirituality, I tried to write a book that brought some thoughts about Christianity and how it might tie into to the brain, not from a religious sort of perspective, but more from what are some things like love and forgiveness and kindness. Those are brain health promoting, okay? And I teach people about that and how if I get angry or if I'm chronically anxious, those are not brain health promoting. And so we don't think about it that way, Hyla, in terms of Western medicine. You're not going to get a prescription to love more or to forgive. But what I'm trying to teach people is that there's literally a physiological effect of love and forgiveness and kindness. And it's a good effect. And if we can try to practice that more, it's going to be very healthy for us, and it's going to be very healthy for those around us as well. Okay. So those things are really important too.
I think we need to send you to Washington, D.C. to talk to some of our leaders, because certainly, as the song says, what the world needs now is love, and we could use some more. As we get ready to wrap up, Paul, I just want to ask one question. Obviously, I'm sure there have been many mentors throughout your time studying, through your career, but who or what has been a really major influence on you in your career, in your work?
Yeah, that's always a good question, and takes some thought, right? But I have an older brother who's got a pervasive developmental disorder, and before I knew anything about anything, growing up in a household where my older brother, who's still alive and doing well, he would really have struggles, right? I didn't understand it. We didn't understand it. But if you didn't answer the question right, you wouldn't sleep at night. And we saw some things that were difficult, and then there was some, we'd go out maybe to a restaurant. He was made fun of and some things. So there was a lot of life lessons that I was kind of trying to observe and make sense of. And I probably, Hyla, I don't know if this is true or not, but probably that early experience in trying to understand and trying to help and trying to be a good brother kind of led me into studying and learning and appreciating and being compassionate and, and helping. And so I it's probably that more than anything else. Probably.
That's beautiful and really inspiring. Thank you for sharing that with us. Paul, I'm so glad you could join us today. For our friends out there, again, there are still tickets available for this, which you can get by calling 239-394-4221 or hop on our website, www.marcoislandart.org. Go to our event calendar and you can click to get your ticket. Some other things that are happening here at the Art Center tomorrow night. We are going to be having an artist talk with all of the artists represented in our present exhibition, Florida Paradise Found. That's going to include artists Emily James, Rachel Pierce, Phyllis Pransky, and Joanne Sanborn. It should be a very interesting evening. These are incredibly talented artists, and the work is extraordinary. So come on down. It's going to be at 6 o'clock. We'll have your complimentary glass of wine for you. And then next week, Tuesday night, we're going to be joined again by our friend from Manhattan, Ben Rosenblum, who's going to be coming down with his jazz trio. He is an extraordinary jazz pianist, as well as playing the accordion, which I've now discovered is a much more complex and interesting instrument than I had ever realized. And then, of course, on Wednesday, January 26th, Dr. Paul Nusbaum will be with us so that we can learn many ways that we can take care of our brain and live a longer, healthier life. Paul, thank you again for being with us. I am so looking forward to seeing you on the 26th of January. Again, it's at 5:30 for our friends out there. Thank you for joining us today. You've given me a lot to think about. And
Thanks so much.
for everybody there, again, please come to these events, cross our threshold, because when you do, you become part of our art family, and you know that every day, in every way, we are working to be your art home. Have a nice afternoon, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Helen.